Hello friend, thank you very much for checking out this video. I'm twin number 3. Some of you have left comments and some of you have written to me. I want to say a huge thank you. I enjoy sharing ideas and I'm very grateful for your encouragement, so thank you very much. I really do appreciate your taking time to do that. In this video I'd like to talk about the line of Cain. That's Genesis chapter 4. You may recall that after the sin of Adam and Eve, they produced 2 sons. These brothers could have been a new start for the world. They could have been companions to each other. They could have had access to the tree of life, which would have granted them eternal life. The world could have been spared from the suffering and death that Adam and Eve brought into it. However, Cain murdered his brother Abel, and then he took his mother Eve as a wife. The 2 settled in the land of Nod or Nod, that means exile, and there Eve and Cain had a son. This son's name is Enoch. In Hebrew that's Hanok. This is not the Enoch who was not after 365 years, apparently ascending to heaven. It is not the Enoch of the keys of Enoch, that's a different one. Genesis follows this with a very short genealogy. Counting Cain, it has a total of 7 generations. One thing that jumps out immediately is these people are incredibly accomplished. So one invents the harp and the flute. Another is the first to make objects of both copper and iron. It seems a little strange that a lineage with such a bad beginning is so accomplished. There's something else different about this genealogy too, compared to those in chapters 5 and 11 of Genesis. Those genealogies say that someone lived X number of years, then begot, that is, procreated, and then lived Y number of years. But in the lineage of Cain, there are no ages given at all. Are we to infer that maybe these people are different from the others? Finally, the names of Cain's descendants are words or phrases in Hebrew. That's not unusual, but boy, what names these are. The meanings include things like fugitive, erased by El. El is God, so someone was erased by God, sent away by El. All in all, these are fairly negative names. Now there is a large literature that parallels the text of Genesis. It was left out of the Bible, but it gives details about the Bible accounts. It casts a very negative connotation on the accomplishments of Cain's descendants. So the one who learned how to make objects out of copper and iron invented weapons like swords. What could be wrong about inventing a harp or a flute and making music for these? Well, according to this literature, that music was made for invoking and worshiping fragmented Elohim. These are the flawed creator spirits of Genesis chapter 1. From an Israelite perspective, these people would have invented idolatry. Have you ever wondered why the Bible makes such a big deal about idolatry? Why is it so adamant that Israel, at least, must have only one God, YHVH, Yud-He, Vav-He, and must avoid idolatry, worship of other gods, completely? I think we've seen a brief answer to that already. What was wrong with the creation of Genesis chapter 1? It was a very dualistic world, obsessed with seed, with procreation. The only people that were made for it were male and female, what we would call breeders. That's not a slam, that's just the connotation of these words in the Bible. The world of Genesis 1 had no place for other genders. They had no place for gay people, lesbians, and trans people. That world was incomplete. It was dualistic. Consequently, it was unbalanced. The Bible calls that approach the way of death. The Bible puts a huge emphasis on being complete. So YHVH, 4 letters, made 4 more genders. In the Bible, the way of life involves becoming complete. Since Israel was chosen by YHVH to live out this way, Israel was told to avoid other deities. Except for a brief period of time in Egypt, I think all the neighbors of Israel through Israelite history worshipped gods and goddesses. These were seen as conferring fertility in a broad sense that includes wealth, abundance. One might argue that a lot of people worship deity for the same reason now. But Israel was meant to work out and live out a different way. So from that perspective, the accomplishments of Cain's descendants would be seen negatively. Well, I asked a number of questions about Cain's line. What made them so different? I think we have the beginning of an answer, at least, in verse 17 of chapter 4. There, most translations tell us that three people, Cain, Eve, and their son Enoch, built a city. Now, what kind of city has three people? That seems totally absurd. Well, I'd like to propose a different way to read the very same words in Hebrew. Now, in parts of the Bible, there are some references to spirit beings. We see them, for example, in the book of Daniel. They're actually widely scattered through the whole Bible, but they don't receive a lot of attention. Again, most of the details are found in other places. But we will see soon in Genesis in chapter 6 that apparently there were spirit beings that became involved sexually with humans. Now, as to how that might happen, I'll save those thoughts for chapter 6. But let me point out a couple of things about verse 17 here. In Hebrew, the verb built, as in built a city, also means to obtain a son. The idea is that one is built up by having sons. In addition, the word that's translated city can also be translated watcher. The common idea is that of watch. A city was a place big enough to post a guard at night, a watch. So rather than saying that these people built a city, the text could say that Cain obtained a watcher, a spirit being, and named his son the same name as the watcher's name. It's possible that this watcher was the actual father of Cain's son. This hybridization of some sort of divine being with a human could lead to all the accomplishments of this line. Eventually, presumably, if these people are physical in the sense that we are, the line died out in the flood. However, the end came earlier for Cain. Remember that he received a mark? This mark protected him from anyone intentionally killing him in retaliation for his murder of Abel. The key word is intentional. According to other ancient books, the descendant of Cain called Lamech accidentally killed him. Lamech was a hunter, he loved doing it, and he continued doing it even after his eyesight began to fail. He took along with him one of his sons to be in effect his eyes and ears. According to these sources, they were hunting one day, they heard something rustling in the brush, and they mistook the mark of Cain for antlers or horns on an animal. Lamech fired an arrow right into Cain and killed him. In the ensuing confusion, Lamech also accidentally killed his own son. The text of Genesis has a saying by Lamech referring to these events. There may be another aspect to this as well. One of the sons of Lamech was called Tubal-Cain. That means product of Cain. This is just my own speculation, but what if Cain had been a fox in the henhouse and had produced a son that Lamech thought was his own? Although Lamech didn't know it, he may have accidentally gotten revenge on Cain. We're not told which of his sons he accidentally killed, but it could be that one. In that case, there could be a further ironic justice too, because it was Tubal-Cain who invented objects of copper and iron. If this person invented weapons that would kill so many people violently, it's appropriate that he would die violently as well. Well, thank you for listening to my thoughts on this chapter. I hope it's interesting to you. I think I should add one more clarification too. While worshipping other deities was considered to be inappropriate for Israel, it's not clear that there's any blanket condemnation of these deities. There are different deities for different nations. And in fact, Israelite scholars taught that any pagan path that made a person a better person was totally acceptable. That's why Jews don't seek to convert anyone now. Thanks so much for listening. Blessed be blessed. I'm twin number 3.